Hi there and welcome to Focus on Frisco. I'm Shannon Fallon. So great to have you guys here. We're happy to be in the studio. We've got this beautiful shot behind us and I can only imagine that all of these beautiful colors are going to stay with us for a while. We have a great show ahead. We're going to start talking first with Joyce Allgaier. We're going to talk about housing, which has always been a big topic of conversation in the town and certainly growing, I think, every day. And then Susan Lee is going to be joining us to talk about community development. So stay right here on Focus on Frisco. Welcome back. You're watching Focus on Frisco. I'm Shannon Fallon. So as promised, I have Joyce Allgaier joining me today, the Community Development Director. And we're going to talk about housing. I know that for those of you who have lived in town or visited, we've been hearing about this for really, actually as long as I can remember. But a lot of it's coming to the forefront now in terms of action items. And Joyce, I'm glad that you're here because Town Council really just spent a lot of time talking about something. And it was called Frisco Housing Helps.
Correct.
And we'll kind of go into that just in a little bit, but let's start with housing in and of itself.
Okay.
What's going on with the town? Why is housing such a big topic here in town?
Okay.
And the county.
Well, and thank you for having me today. This is a really important subject to the town of Frisco, citizens, businesses, as we all know. It has become very difficult to hire employees, to find employees because of the lack of housing. Right. That's at least one component of why finding employees is difficult in an economy like this and in a great mountain town like we have. So let me start by saying the Frisco Town Council has made housing one of its top priorities. And by housing, I mean workforce housing. Places where our workforce can live, and ideally, it's really good to have your employees work in the community, or at least the close-in region to where they work, because then they don't have to drive as much, they're committed to the community, they get to know more people, they're our volunteers and participate in community events and so on. So it's a really healthy situation that makes a community more sustainable. So that said, back to the council's goals, the council adopted the 2019-2020 strategic plan, and workforce housing and ways to accomplish that was right at the top. So they are taking it very seriously. And you know, as we know, Shannon, in mountain communities like ours, like places like Aspen, Snowmass Village, Basalt, Steamboat, Vale, this topic is right at the forefront because property values have escalated. Yeah. It's very difficult for locals to purchase housing when everybody else wants to be here, when we have people who want a second home to come up from Denver. And that's a key, I guess, push point, because we've got over 4.5 million people within 2 hours, and they all want to be here.
Well, and that's, I think we've talked about it a lot in that Frisco is such an amazing place to be because we're right on the highway and we have all of these amenities. Not necessarily right here in town. We have a big town, and then you can access all of those things that everybody from Summit County loves to do, from Lake County, from Park County, and certainly those areas in Denver. So they're coming up on the weekends, as we see with traffic, right? But you're exactly right. I mean, it's so important to realize that we do want to live here, and we are the people who want to live here, but there are so many people who want to access it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of them, because of the nature of Denver, can afford these second homes, right?
True. Yep.
But those of us who were starting out or have been here and maybe need to move into the next level. Maybe some of us started out in those small houses because it was just 2 people. And then they start to grow their family, which is such an important part of these communities. Yeah. So this is, again, just to kind of reiterate why the town is seeing it as such an important part of the community.
And as Susan Lee will speak to next in your
Right.
discussion with her, Susan's one of our planners who just wrapped up our Frisco community plan. The desire to create a real community where people can live and participate was very strong at the head of how people envision a future Frisco.
Right.
So in order to accomplish that, housing's one of the key elements.
So before we go any further, can I ask you a question about housing? So, not every town feels this. You get those really tiny towns that are still mountain towns, but it's not necessarily the tourism draw that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get places like Denver, and those are big cities. Do all towns and cities have housing as their top priority? I mean, how do they differentiate? How do some towns handle it and some towns go, we're good?
So there's a big difference between, as you know, a major metropolitan area like Denver to Colorado Springs,
Right.
and that whole burgeoning area, and yes, across the country. As sort of a perspective, housing is a big issue. I keep hearing statistics about the lack of affordable housing, just the lack of housing stock. Housing starts have slowed down, but
Okay.
every community has different strategies to address housing. And with such a strong economy right now, the private sector has really stepped up in Denver because they can, it's profitable.
Right.
And as everybody has noticed, all the cranes in Denver
Oh my
and
goodness.
the multifamily housing that's going on there, it's kind of addressing the issue. So
Right.
so they're doing pretty good.
In and of itself.
Yes.
Right.
Now here we have different things that drive the economy differently. So we do have that tourism economy, very important to Frisco. Our property values have gotten very, very high, so it makes it more difficult for that private sector person, like Denver has, to build on that very
Right.
expensive land.
Right.
So consequently, we've seen less affordable housing being built, of course, and more free market housing being
Okay.
built. So, 4 units of townhomes here, 5 units here. We've seen quite a bit of that, and they're done very nicely.
Yes.
But it's not addressing the local need to get into a house.
Right. Right.
I want to add to that. Frisco's need is for people who want to live here full time, and so let's say so they want to buy. But
Right.
there's also a very big need for rental.
Right.
And the 2013 and 2016 Summit Combined Housing Authority have done very good assessments of need, and here in the 10-mile basin,
Right.
we have over 500 units of need, both to purchase and to rent. So, as you know,
Right.
with the seasonality that we have,
Well,
with peaks in employment,
yeah.
people need to rent and
Right.
provide, labor to that seasonal economy, whether
Absolutely. And it's always been something that I've kind of thought about and questioned for up here, because I got out of college, I was in Cincinnati, I got out of college, I found an apartment, I lived there, I did my thing, and then I moved out here. And you think about that not everybody wants to make a purchase. But as you mentioned, because of the seasonality, because maybe this is the first time they've lived up here and they want to see if they actually like it. So is that being addressed as well, that rental? And I know the town did such a great job. We did a piece on those properties over on Galena.
the Mary Ruth Place.
Yes, and it's delightful. But is that being explored beyond this, the rental market?
Yes, it is. And so I think this
An
is
affordable rental market?
Yes, so this is sort of a platform for actions that the council would like to take, and that is knowing that we'd like to create housing or have housing for people to buy, for people to rent. So
Right.
there's a need for both kinds of housing. And not only that, part of that platform is, maybe some people can't afford a single family
Right.
affordable house, but and some people need to be in a condo, smaller,
Right.
maybe a studio, maybe one bedroom, maybe
Less
two.
maintenance.
Exactly.
Right,
Less
because-
maintenance, less cost.
Right.
And then we know we need, small rentals, maybe even rentals up to 2 or 3 bedrooms for a family to rent. Again, not
Right.
everybody can get their foot in the door with, a down payment and getting a mortgage. So,
Right.
so I guess that that plate of what we need is kind of broad. So we do need some of everything right now.
Yes.
Which,
Oh, go ahead.
well, in a way, which makes it easier to apply the strategies that the council would like to apply. So what I mean by that is it would be you mentioned Mary Ruth Place.
Right.
So those are rental units. Good. We know that there's a rental market.
Right.
We can also strive to develop property. So these are different strategies for affordable housing. So we can develop rental. We can develop housing for sale. We can do what's called buy downs, which is the town can step in with its 5A funds, and we're in good shape with our 5A funds right now. We can
Right.
talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And actually buy a unit that's on the free market, so at market rate.
Okay.
And then resell it, but sell it at a lesser price and put a deed restriction on it. So let's say.
So let's do this.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back, let's kind of delve more into that.
Okay.
And then talk a little bit about what the council produced and talked about this week.
Sure.
During their meeting.
Yep,
All
that
right.
sounds good.
So we're going to take a quick break here on Focus on Frisco. Stay right with us.
Do I have any water?